Yes, can you hear us? We're intermittent. Do you want to try again? Okay. To go through the other people and see if the connection improves.
Hi, my name is Christina. I'm the Donald Wilson Fellow at Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, where we also work on nationality and statelessness issues.
Christina. Flavio.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Flavio. I'm from RSK, Human Rights, and I'm an intern at the Americans program, and I'm hearing this in behalf of Lida Allen.
Perfect. Someone who ended I guess the code of instead of their name. The last how you recognize yourself.
Can you hear? Hi, it's Jocelyn. I'm the director of the Canadian Centre on Statelessness. I think that may have been me because I don't speak Spanish. I didn't know what I was doing. So I apologize. It's Jocelyn.
Glad you were able to connect. Okay. Let's just try time. Can you hear us now? Okay. Connection with Kara, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. So, Catherine Harrington is the campaign manager of the global campaign. Kara?
Can you hear me?
I'm going to come back at the end of the presentation. We can do another introduction and when we open it for questions. So, is the campaign manager of the global campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, which mobilizes international action to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. The globe consists of a coalition of international, regional, and local NGOs, UN agencies, academics, and civil society partners housed the Women's Refugee Commission. She previously worked at Women's Learning Partnership, where she was the Senior Program Officer for Advocacy and Communications. She has produced 2 films, one backlash against women's rights post-Arab Spring called Because Our Cause is Just, and a documentary on combating gender-based violence called Fear to Freedom. Catherine holds a Master of Science in Global Affairs from New York University and a Bachelor of Arts and History from Tulane University. So
Thank you. Thank you for CEJL and the Americas Network for facilitating this webinar. I'm so pleased to be having this opportunity to speak with all of you today on behalf of the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights. It sounds like there are a lot of people that are have a lot of expertise on these issues that I'm going to be speaking about, but I wasn't sure how much, what participants might be on that are maybe still in the process of starting to work on these issues. So what I do is kind of go through the impacts of gender discrimination in nationality law, which significantly overlaps with the human rights abuses that are linked to statelessness. Of course, statelessness is one of the impacts of gender discrimination in nationality law. Then kind of give you an overview of the work of the global campaign. And then I have some ideas about how the Americas Network, some opportunities that I think would be for us to collaborate on, but I really would be eager to kind of open it up for discussion at that point and have all of your good ideas about how we can further work together to combat statelessness and gender discrimination in nationality laws. And I suppose I should start by saying, if you all weren't already aware, the Americas Network and CEJL are both coalition members of the global campaign. And I hope that through getting more information that all of your organizations might be interested in also joining our coalition of organizations. So the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights was launched last summer in 2014 during the side event of the Human Rights Council. As Perry said, it's built upon a coalition of international, regional, and national partner organizations, including its steering committee, which consists of Women's Refugee Commission, UNHCR, Equality Now, Equal Rights Trust, and the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion. As I said, the mission of the campaign is to end gender discrimination in nationality law so women and men have equal rights to acquire, change, and retain their nationality, and to confer nationality to spouses and children. As you know, nationality laws vary from country to country, and the very specifics of nationality laws can be rather convoluted, to say the least. When it comes to gender discrimination in nationality laws, it's quite simple. It's when one's gender determines whether they have access to equal rights to acquire, change, or retain their nationality. In the overwhelming majority of countries that maintain these discriminatory laws is, of course, women that are discriminated against, although there are still a number of states that have inequality in their nationality law where men are discriminated against. Until quite recently, this was the norm in virtually every country. Last century, as governments recognized that not only do women deserve these fundamental rights, but that society as a whole benefited from women citizens' families, men citizens' families having access to this essential social contract, the laws were reformed. However, today there are still 27 countries that maintain discrimination in a woman's ability to confer nationality to her children. See in the slide right now, that's a list of the 27 countries. Those countries that are listed in yellow are countries that have been designated by the Global Campaign as target countries. And you'll note that the two countries in the Americas region that are in yellow there are the Bahamas and Barbados, which are the only two countries in the Western Hemisphere that deny women equal rights to confer nationality to their children. There are 60 countries that maintain some form of gender discrimination in their nationality laws. And this discrimination exists to varying degrees. The list that we have up there is not an exhaustive list. There's actually right now a global review that one of our steering committee members, Equality Now, along with Trust Law and a couple law firms, are in the process of doing a global review. It should be done in the next several months to kind of have an updated list so that we have, clear numbers on and identifications for those countries that have any form of discriminatory provisions in their nationality law. And I'll be sure to circulate that through the network. This discrimination exists to varying degrees. In the most egregious instances, a woman has no right to pass her nationality to her children or spouse. This is regardless of whether or not the child is born inside the country, and regardless of whether or not the child or spouse would be stateless, if not for having access to the nationality of the mother or wife. Some states allow women to pass nationality to their children when children are born in the country, but not allow them to pass nationality when their children are born abroad. This includes the Bahamas and Barbados. In some countries, the marital status of the mother determines whether or not she can pass citizenship to her children. For example, in some states, if the mother is single or divorced, she would have the opportunity to pass nationality to her children. Some countries make exceptions if the father is unknown or stateless. But we've seen across the board that even when these exceptions are in the law, to a great extent, they're not actually implemented when it comes down to it by the local authorities. There's discrimination with a woman's ability to confer to her spouse, and of that group of 60 countries, the overwhelming majority of those countries maintain this form of discrimination. And in of those countries, women have, in some countries, it might be that a female citizen has to wait X number of years longer than a man would to pass nationality to her spouse. But in any of those countries would have no right to pass nationality to their spouse at all, a right that is reserved for men in those countries. But the good news, with all of this kind of depressing news for the discrimination that still exists in 2015, is that As complicated as it can be to change laws, addressing gender discrimination and nationality laws is actually quite simple with the political will. That's kind of not a small addition there. Political will is the biggest challenge, but in order to change the laws, oftentimes all that needs to be done is remove terms of gender when they appear, or add two words, and mother or and woman. And actually a number of countries that have made reforms over the years have done just that, just with the addition of those two words. As you're well aware, being experts on statelessness, similarly, gender discrimination and nationality law contradicts a number of international conventions. Includes the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Convention on all forms, the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and of course the Convention on Statelessness. And I won't go through too much detail on the international law because I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with this, but I just wanted to note that in particular CEDAW has a specific note in Article 9 that state parties must grant equal to women and men in terms of acquiring, changing, or retaining their nationality in Article 9.1, and in conferring their nationality to their children in Article 9.2. And the CEDAW committee has said in the general comment that this article also applies to conferral of nationality to citizens as well. Another important thing to note is that gender discrimination and nationality laws are not only in contradiction to state parties' state commitments to these international conventions, but also frequently in violation of those states' own constitutions and the provisions that relate to non-discrimination on the basis of sex. Now, aside from these legal considerations, I want to take a moment and look at the real harm done to individuals and families, and to apologize ahead of time that this anecdote that I'm going to share with you is not from the Americas region, and this kind of actually illustrates one of the needs for the global campaign specific to the region. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. Of course, we're thrilled that the Western Hemisphere and the Americas has largely eradicated gender discrimination from their nationality laws. At the same time, when conducting advocacy on the need for reform in Barbados and the Bahamas, there's a real need for additional testimonies about affected individuals. So I could just throw that out there to all of you that are working in those regions. And if I'll just go through these slides first, of course, in addition to international law, these laws are in contradiction to state commitments under the Beijing Platform for Action, the Millennium Development Goals, and of course the new Sustainable Development Goals, goals on gender equality, and also the new goal on legal identity. So the story I'd like to share with you is the story of Hayam. It's a true story. Hayam's a Lebanese woman. She married her Egyptian husband 23 years ago in Lebanon. They have 3 daughters, Noor, who's 17 years old, Amar, who's 12 years old, and Aya, who's 9 years old. Because of the fact that her husband struggles to obtain documentation to be able to work, residency documents, Hayam's forced to provide for the family. Because of the children's and her spouse's lack of access to care, they've had trouble being able to get needed surgery for Aya, who has been struggling with some pretty serious health issues. Because they don't have access to other social services, including subsidized special education subsidies. Amar, who's 12 and is dyslexic, is unable to go to the special school that she would otherwise have access to. Noor, who's 17, was married off to a relative at the age of 15 because of her lack of security lacking citizenship in her country. I think that you can see that there's a variety of different ways in which just the sheer fact that Hayam is a woman and therefore able to pass on her citizenship creates a whole multitude of human rights abuses and hardships for the family that result simply because she's not a male citizen. And as I said before, it not only exists when the family members are stateless as a result of gender discrimination and nationality laws, but even when families living in the mother's country, they might have access to the father's nationality, but that doesn't really help them a lot if they're still based in the country where they don't have citizenship. So the number of abuses that are associated with these discriminatory laws are very significant. They impact a woman's right to custody of her children. When a mother's children only have the nationality of her father, she may lose custody in the event of a divorce. They inhibit a couple's right to a family. Research done by campaign partners has shown numerous cases of couples that, despite the fact that they very much like to have children, they've decided not to because of the hardships that their children would face. There are links with gender-based violence. Women whose children don't have their nationality may be less likely to leave an abusive marriage. Of course, as I stated before, it can result in statelessness when children are unable to access the nationality of their father. And in fact, gender discrimination in nationality laws is one of the primary causes of this worldwide. And most of you, I imagine, are aware in the UNHCR's Global Action Plan to End Statelessness, ending gender discrimination in nationality laws is action number 3. One of the things that I like to stress is that, when you're talking about gender discrimination, I think it's really vital for people to understand that gender discrimination doesn't just have a negative impact on women, it has an impact on men and on all aspects of society. So when you look at the particular situation of gender discrimination and nationality laws, daughters can actually oftentimes acquire nationality through marriage with a male citizen of the country that they were born in. Sons have that opportunity, of course, because women in that country can't pass nationality to their spouses in many countries. And again, you see this statelessness then being passed on to the children and just exponentially increasing the problem. This also is related to access to inheritance and owning property. Of course, again, if daughters are able to acquire citizenship through marriage with a male citizen of that country, they may be able to acquire the family property. But the sons obviously are again unable to access. Unable. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Another point that I wanted to mention was, contrary to the assertion made by those that are opposed to reforming these laws, that gender discrimination and nationality laws are meant to bind the family together, they actually serve to tear families apart. Some women have chosen to divorce their husbands because in some countries that's the only means for them to confer nationality to their children. Due to employment and residency permit burdens, fathers frequently leave the country in order to seek work abroad. And so, it goes without saying that reform of these laws are, of course, critical to equality, but it's really important, I think, for all of us in our advocacy to stress to governments that they also support gender equal nationality laws, support national stability, economic development, human security, and prosperity by allowing all of the citizens to contribute to that country's future. One other point that I wanted to mention is the increased vulnerability of women and children that are fleeing conflict and natural disasters as a result of gender discrimination and nationality laws. And this is something that's been noted by the Security Council in UN Security Council Resolution 2122. So this is also a great way for us to involve the kind of women, peace, and security community and the humanitarian sector to really emphasize that these laws are critical to not only ensuring that women and children have their rights, but it's really also an issue of protection when they're fleeing conflict and natural disaster. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit now about the global campaign, and I just wanted to briefly mention some of our target countries. Our mandate is to provide support for reforms wherever there's an entry point for reforms globally. So where opportunities present themselves, we're very happy to provide support. But considering the fact that there are 27 countries that deny women equal rights to pass nationality to their children, and over 60 countries that have some form of discrimination, we narrowed this down to a number of target countries that we're paying particular attention to and building up our coalitions and providing additional support. As I said, in the Western Hemisphere, that includes Bahamas and Barbados. In Sub-Saharan Africa, that's Liberia, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, and Togo. In the Middle East North Africa region, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar. We also see some opportunity to get some movement in the UAE as well, which is something we're going to be looking at a bit more this year. In the Asia-Pacific region, Nepal and Malaysia, and some other countries that have been identified as of late in Somalia and Kiribati, that the Somali government in particular has demonstrated that this might be something that they're going to be addressing in the near future, and so we're looking to provide support there as well. So the campaign, there's basically three main areas of our work. Advocacy at the international level, support at the national level, advocacy and campaigns, and research, technical assistance, and knowledge sharing. So in terms of our international advocacy, part of the work that we do is engagement with the UN and permanent missions in Geneva and New York. And I've actually been working with a group of what we're calling our champion states, or friends of the campaign. And these are governments that have prioritized both creating gender inequality and confronting statelessness, and have partnered with the global campaign to see how they can provide support for our men. That includes a number of countries that have a special interest in these issues, and some of those countries include the United States, Portugal, Canada, and then recent reformers as well that are playing a big role in kind of providing a good opportunity for the campaign to showcase the experience that they had with reform and the benefit that the country's really seeing now that they have enacted these reforms. Those countries include Algeria, Kenya, Indonesia, and Senegal. And there are a number of other countries that we've been talking to, and we're looking to expand that group of champion states. Another aspect of our work at the international level is engagement with the human rights treaty bodies and review mechanisms, specifically the UPR process, the Universal Periodic Review, and engagement with the CEDAW and CRC committees. I provided briefings to both the CEDAW and the CRC committee in the past several months to really ensure that these issues are addressed as, of course, gender discrimination and nationality laws, a clear violation of these conventions, and also kind of in regular communication with them to make sure that they're well informed as to particular countries that are coming up for review. We also work with both our champion states and a larger group of missions by providing kind of summaries, documentation when countries are up for their universal periodic review, provides permissions in Geneva that participate in the UPR process with a snapshot of the status of the law in the country, some recommended questions for the countries to pose to that state that's being reviewed during their session, and also suggested recommendations for those countries to make to that country that's being reviewed. And we've seen some great impact of that outreach. For example, last spring when Liberia, Libya, and Malawi were being reviewed, we conducted outreach with a number of permanent missions, and we saw great attention to the issue of the discrimination in their nationality law under those reviews. And so I think for all of us that are working on these things, this is a good thing to keep in mind, because UPR submissions are very labor intensive, and we do them sometimes in partnership with our coalition members. But doing the direct advocacy to member states is a bit more efficient. It's time and resource efficient, and it can really ensure that those questions are asked, and then that those states under review provide answers to those questions and accept or reject recommendations that are made by states. In terms of other aspects of our international advocacy, of course, engaging in international events, we had a high-level event at the Commission on the Status of Women last March, and a parallel event with civil society representatives. Had a good opportunity to present the global campaign at the Statelessness workshop here in DC last February. And of our national level advocacy, part of our work is informing key stakeholders, because, I was surprised when I, was first kind of working on making links with national partners, that some entities that you would think would be aware of the status of the laws, and if not, or are aware of the status, be aware of the impact of laws, are not necessarily, because, this is kind of seen as a niche issue. People don't really have a full appreciation of the real impact on families in their countries because of the laws. Another aspect of our national level advocacy work is building and strengthening networks within the country of civil society actors and some government allies, parliamentary allies that are interested in supporting reforms. We've also worked with national partners to co-develop national advocacy plans, both in terms of what is needed to be implemented on the ground by our national coalition members and how the global campaign can provide support at the international level, and also through engagement with national level media and government officials. To secure funding for our national partners for them to be able to implement those national advocacy campaigns. And that's something that, I mean, we're very interested in hearing from any members about aspects of the work that they feel need to be done. And then, you know, part of my job is to have conversations with some of those funding institutions that might be interested in supporting that work. Actually, as kind of an example of this national level work, last year, one of our coalition members, the Bahamas-based Coalition for Constitutional Equality, we've worked with them in close collaboration with UNHCR and also the Americas Network. We were able to bring in the Minister of Social Affairs from Bahamas speak at the high-level side event at CSW, and at the same time, we had a member of civil society speak on our parallel NGO panel during CSW. We also worked with our national partners there, with CCE, to co-develop their national advocacy strategy, which I understand that the Americas Network recently had a webinar on the Bahamas. So for those of you that were on that webinar, you probably know that despite the fact that there was supposed to be a referendum, a constitutional referendum this summer, that would have, ideally if passed, it would have eliminated gender discrimination in nationality law, and also had a general provision on ending discrimination on the basis of sex in the Bahamian Constitution. That's now postponed until after the next parliamentary elections in 2017. So we'll be kind of using this time period over the next couple of years to really conduct that grassroots outreach that's needed to mobilize support for the referendum. Another example of kind of the type of workshops that we do, actually leaving this Saturday for Madagascar, one of our target countries. We have a 3-day workshop starting this next Monday to Wednesday. The first day will be with, and this workshop is in partnership with our National Civil Society Partner Focused Development, UHCR and OHCHR. We're going to be working with representatives from the various ministries involved in nationality law and the first of the workshop. The second day of the workshop is with parliamentarians that are looking at reform of the law, so that we can ensure that they are really well informed as to why it needs to be informed, not just what we hope will be in the new law, but also good practices in terms of implementation. And then the third day will be advocacy strategy planning with our National Civil Society Partner Focus, followed by a press briefing to really kind of work to get press on board there. So into our national level work, as I mentioned before, we work to facilitate knowledge sharing, provide technical assistance, and research. The research that's done is led by one of our steering committee members, the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion, also other coalition members that are involved in research. And then we see as our role to then make sure that our coalition members have access to that information, that it's feeding into the advocacy that we're doing. Another key aspect of the kind of knowledge sharing work that we're doing is facilitating exchanges of good practices between activists, both internationally and cross-regionally. For example, on the sidelines of Commission on the Status of Women last March, we facilitated an exchange between Kenyan activists that had participated in the successful advocacy campaign in Kenya in 2010 to achieve gender equality in the nationality law and in the Constitution, and Bahamian activists. And just that, the impact of those exchanges is just incredible. And so it's something that we really want to prioritize in the next year and hope that we can maybe involve some of you in that process. We're also about to launch a new website. The global campaign right now does have our website is equalnationalityrights.org. But we're in the process of completing a new website that is a bit more robust, a bit more user-friendly. And one of the aspects that I'm really excited about with the new website, based on conversations with a number of activists working in different regions on this issue, there's a real need for greater access to information, just not just on the status of laws in given countries, but they compare with regional neighbors and then with countries even in other regions that they kind of see themselves as perhaps on par with or having similar demographics to. So we've developed this interactive map that will give you a really easy snapshot into what countries maintain discrimination, just a little kind of preview of what that discrimination looks like on the interactive map. And you see kind of where things stand in a given region. In terms of the year ahead, in addition to the workshop that I just mentioned in Madagascar and kind of ongoing engagement with the various UN processes and UPR review processes, we're going to be having a similar technical workshop in Bahrain, and hopefully, if we're able to secure the funding that I hope that we for a similar technical workshop in Liberia and in Nepal later in the year. Also in conversations with the Americas Network about how we can continue to support the movement for reform in the Bahamas and also in Barbados. And we're really eager to in order to kind of bolster the national level advocacy to see how we can really work to funnel and encourage funders to get the funds to national partners to implement the campaigns that are needed. So just quickly, a few thoughts that I have on how we could kind of greater integrate and collaborate the work that the Global Campaign is doing with the Americas Network. And I'd be really interested to hear, well, if you have any of your questions, I'm happy to talk about any of these points that I discussed in more detail, but I'm really eager also to hear ideas about how we might have further collaboration with the Americas Network and with your individual organizations, which are all very warmly welcome to join the Global Campaign. So, first and foremost, I think with any of these networks, that solidarity that comes with, we have to showcase the organizations that are supportive of mission in and of itself is really vital to advancing the mission. And membership, first and foremost, is that it's a show of solidarity. We very much recognize that all NGOs are incredibly resource stretched, and so we see the opportunity for organizations to work in an ad hoc basis where their programs and their interests overlap with the work of the Global Campaign. Of course, amplifying each other's work, we're always looking for opportunities to amplify and kind of there both media and to the activist community, the work that our national partners and our regional partners are doing. Participating in exchanges, like I mentioned before, with the Bahamian activists and the Canadian activists, we're looking to do more of those and maybe open it up a bit more so that it's a number of country representatives involved. I would appeal to all of you in the Americas Network to leverage your national convenes and events that you participate in to take the opportunity to make sure that people are aware of the link between gender discrimination, nationality laws, and statelessness. And really, I think when talking about statelessness in the Americas region, I think it's really important to highlight the fact that one of the things that I think the region can be incredibly proud of in terms of combating statelessness is it is the region with the least amount of gender discrimination in their nationality laws. It's also been eradicated. And so that's something that I think should be stressed. And in terms of the way in which that happened, how you got there, that's something that the Global Campaign is eager to share with other in other regions as well. Of course, advocacy resources, we're developing a number of resources in terms of how to better engage the CEDA and CRC committees in these issues for those organizations that might make submissions. And I should also note any organization that's interested in kind of co-signing or providing testimonies to inform those submissions, we're always happy to be including other organizational names in our submissions. And engaging regional governments. This is something that I've discussed with AA colleagues a lot. We've had support in the past from really Uruguay, Brazil, and Argentina in different events that the Global Campaign has had. And it's incredibly vital. It's wonderful for the kind of UL actors in terms of state governments to be kind of taking on gender equality, and it's vital to our work that we have as many voices out there as possible. But particularly when we're looking at a number of countries in the developing world and in the global south, I think the ability for us to raise the voices of those particularly from the Americas, partners like Chile, the governments that I mentioned before, that has a particular resonance with our target countries that maybe are, might take that message a little bit differently than if it's coming from a partner in Europe. So I would look to all of you and to the Americas Network to see how we can greater involve governments in the Americas in terms of being a champion of both eradicating statelessness, but championing ending gender discrimination and nationality law is one critical step that's needed to end statelessness. So I will end there for my presentation component, and I'd love to hear any